yet another learning opportunity for us. I must appreciate you so very seriously for managing to log in this morning. You're very much welcome. I want to really thank all of you for the commitment and normally being there every Sunday morning. We really do not take your time for granted. I want to also very much thank our mentors, the professors who are here with us, and the doctors who have decided to take off some time this morning so that they can guide us in this journey of ours. Thank you very, very much. So you will notice that for some time now, I think this is week 4 or something, we've been still looking at theory, looking at how do we integrate theory in our work. And we began by looking at theory in the background. How do we introduce theory and how do we make sure that theory is there in our background? We've also looked at along the way, how do we connect theory to the methods, and Professor Julius and Professor Laura have ably handled those 2 areas pretty much well. And even today, we still continue looking at theory at another level. But at the students, this 1 hour of the students, we usually just discuss things relating to our work and also trying to see how we can help one another. So today, just ask ourselves some questions and want to see how far we can go. Again, I want just for the process of us reminding ourselves and probably helping one another. One of the questions that we're asking this morning, and if possible, you can unmute and give us your response in just a minute or less. One of the questions we're asking ourselves today, and maybe others can learn from your experience, is that what theory are you using in your research? And how did you arrive at that theory? What informed the choice of that theory? People are asking me, so now what do I do? Do I just go and look at other people's work in the library and just pick any topic and put there? How do I go about it? Now, sometimes I don't have response to those questions, so I bring them here so that we can share experiences. Maybe 1 or 2 people can be able to guide. So that is the question I was asked over the week. Someone asked me, what theory are you using in your research? And what informed the choice of that theory? I've also brought it here. So in just about 5 minutes or less, can we just share that? What theory are you using in your research, and what informed that choice of theory? How did you arrive at that theory? I know there are so many theories out there, but how did you decide that this is the one for my research? This is the one that is going to help me explain the phenomenon that I'm trying to study. So you're free to unmute and share with us your experience, 1 what is that theory you're using to explain your work? And then 2, how did you arrive at that theory? What informed the choice of such theory? So I throw the ball to you, and I ask you to unmute and then share your experience with us. Maybe again, just for us to be able to hear and understand one another, we could do unmute. Sorry, we could mute so that we are
recording in progress.
So that we're able to hear. Sorry, yeah, I'm using 2 gadgets to help me strengthen my network here. So probably for us to be able to hear one another, you could mute if you're not giving a speech. You can unmute if you're speaking. So that's the question in there, and I'm looking through my chat here to see who goes first. Again, probably we could try to keep our videos off so that, you know, these weird hours, it's possible that somebody is in bed, and so you may not want yourself to be seen. So you can keep your video off, but when you're speaking, keep your mic on. Okay, so I'm trying to scroll through and see. I seem not to see any hand up as of now. But I know a number of you, so I will sometimes I may be forced to call out your name. I want to start by asking my brother John, what theory are we using in your work? And is it by random? We just throw it somewhere and just say, okay, this one. Or there is you did some kind of investigation before arriving to that particular theory you're using.
Good morning, Elaso and the colleagues and our professors. I am assuming that we are referring to John to be me and nobody else.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Now, you have challenged us. I assume that the choice of a theory must be motivated by something. So the entry point to this discussion is some sort of systematic literature review. We are expected to have covered a number of theories in our background research and studied as many theories on our research area as possible. In my particular case, my area of study is destination choice, something to do with tourism. And from my consultation with very many authors, I discovered that many theories have been used by different authors, such as the competitive advantage theory, stakeholder theory, and many others. But in my case, what I consider to be the ideal theory is the sustainable competitive advantage theory. And the theory has evolved over time from many scholars, beginning with the Porter's work. So when you look at authors that I have consulted, and are quite a number, they say the theory focuses on the ability of a travel destination to provide a unique product range to its customers better than its competitors, as well as offer something of value, something that destination seekers appreciate. It also includes operational efficiency and sustainability. I am in my area of research, I'm talking about promoting Uganda as a destination to the world. And this is influenced, the motivation for this is when you look at the National Planning Authority report, NDP3, when you look at authors like Ahewa in English, when you look at authors like Akon 2020, they say Uganda has a variety of unique tourism products which offer a basis for the application of this theory. They go ahead to explain what they mean by Uganda having a unique tourism product, talking about the number of mammalian species, the flora, the fauna. They talk about the orographic features, and this cannot be replicated anywhere else. They are unique to Uganda alone. So if we use this theory, we are able to competitively teach Uganda as a destination which offers things which are different from everybody else, and therefore has the potential to be competitive sustainably in the region. And of course, the main motivation is the World Tourism Report of 2020 says that destinations should promote sustainability. So my motivation for applying this theory is influenced by one having looked at what other authors did and the theories they used. I related to my circumstances, and I settled for a theory which I call sustainable competitive advantage theory. I submit, Chair.
Wow, thank you very much, John. And I pick a number of things. Ones that you refer us to systematic review, and once you've been able to conduct a systematic review, you'll be able to, meet quite a number of theories, and then you also relate to your work and see which of the theories that you've seen in your review can be able to help you explain the phenomenon very well. Thank you very much, John. And I'm looking for my friend Peter. I think from Zimbabwe. You sent me a text and you're asking me how do I pick the theory, and I think you're not online to be able to pick some of these responses. I want to welcome some of my friends and colleagues from Makerere. Nesta, you're very welcome, and I hope you will be able to benefit from the discussions we have today. Thank you for being part of us today, this morning. So that is the response from John. And maybe one question I want to ask John now before we proceed. John, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Good. There is a direct question here. Somebody is asking, is your research qualitative or quantitative? And if I think we'll say if either of the two, does it have any impact? Does the choice of that theory, I don't know, let me try to understand the question very well. But I think the person is saying, if the research is qualitative or quantitative, does it have any effect on the nature of the theory that you use? John, what's your comment? Is your work qualitative or quantitative, and does that have any impact on the choice of your theory? Over to you, John.
My research is qualitative largely in nature, and when you pick a theory, we are expected, after reading a number of authors, to understand how it has been applied elsewhere, and you relate it to our circumstances. So whereas I'm in the infancy of my work, and therefore I definitely speak as somebody in kindergarten, authors who have used this theory used something they call video analysis. And video is an acronym for or value something that is rare, something that is hard to copy or imitate, and so on and so forth. So they did some sort of video analysis, which influenced their choice of methods. So I would think that there is a connection between the theory you pick and the analysis that you are going to do, or methodology you are going to put. Yes, that they're related in my view.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Let me I see two friends or three whose mics are on, and I'm tempted to think that they have something to share with us. I want to start with Michael. Michael. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Joseph.
Welcome, and the question is there for us to share. Can you share your experience with us?
Of course, as John was saying, I'm also have not taken long on this journey, but what I understand, the theory is what informs the direction of the journey we are going to take. Okay. Which means at a certain point, it will influence the choice of either whether you do qualitative or quantitative, because it affects the whole journey. So I do think it is possible a theory can affect the choice of your research method.
Okay.
So I think so, but I need to read more about these theories and their connection with the research so that I can be sure. But at the moment, I do think theory affects the whole journey, including using the method. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. And as I keep telling the rest of us, this 1 hour, they have allocated it to us. So at this point, feel free and share your views. There are no wrong or correct views at this point. And eventually, in the end, we have professors already logged in and we have doctors, and they will be able to clarify some of the things. But as of now, don't keep quiet with your thoughts. You might be thinking that they are wrong when actually they are not. You might be thinking that they are correct when actually they are not. So it's better we share from here, and then the doctors will be able to, the professors will be able to help us clear some of the things that are not really coming out clearly. I had something to do with gender balance. Edith, I saw your mic was on for long, and I think I did not give you the chance. The chance is here now for you to share with us. Okay, as we wait for for Edith, there is a question here from a friend called OJ. He says, colleagues, I have not yet started my writing. I am requesting you to help me to comment on my proposed topic. And probably along the way, somebody should help OJ. He says, my topic is students' discipline and academic performance. Students' discipline and academic performance. He's requesting us to comment on his work. This is his topic, and he says he has not started, and he says you should comment, and I thought I would read it. Okay, OJ, That's noted. Now, let me, it looks like it has disappeared, but let me come to my brother Mohammed Kasad. But again, if I don't pronounce your name very well, kindly have mercy on me. You know, I come from the east, the other side. So some names around here disturb me. Mohammed Kasada, my brother, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, my brother.
And I think I've just joined. Then I just give me some 5 minutes, and I understand properly.
Okay, thank you. Let me. Next here is Jonah Fred. Jonah Fred, can we assume that you have also just joined?
Yeah, yes, indeed. I've just joined us 1 minute ago when we were actually repeating mentioning the question about student discipline and the academic performance. I don't know what exactly you want us to comment about. I beg your pardon?
Exactly. Joseph, it is the same thing with me. I've just joined right now. And it was unfortunate that this is my first time to join this conversation. I just logged in only to hear my name. So I was caught by surprise, though I'll be a good participant.
It is, first of all, you're very welcome.
Yes.
We are happy that you have
You're
joined
welcome.
and you're part of us. And
Exactly.
so we will be engaging with you and share so many ideas together.
It will be my pleasure.
Yes, so the question which came over the week, and I didn't want to have it to myself alone, it's just that somebody is struggling. Is asking what theory are we using in our research, and how did we pick that particular theory, not any other? And so that is the question which is there. And I want to think that a few people have responded, and I think we can now move on to the next bit part of the work that we want to discuss this morning. So, theory in quantitative research, theory in qualitative research, theory in mixed method research. Whatever approach or whatever route you are taking, it has to be probably one of the three. It's either you're talking about the theory and you're applying it in your quantitative research, or you're doing it in your qualitative research, or you're there in mixed methods, or at least one of the three. And so what we want to do right now is to watch some clip, which is short. I think they're about 2 clips, and they will talk about theory in quantitative research. How do you use it in quantitative research? And probably how do you use theory in your qualitative research? So welcome with me to this short clips, and then we'll be commenting as we move.
Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk about the use of theory in quantitative research and how and where to write up your theory when you are writing your proposal or your manuscript. So quantitative research tests hypotheses from theory. So theory is sort of the foundation in quantitative research because you work with theory to write your hypotheses and determine what you think the relationships are going to be among variables that you are testing in your research. So you test causal claims in quantitative research. So causality means that we expect one variable to cause a change in another variable, which is different from an association or correlation where we're just talking about one variable having a relationship with another variable where we can't necessarily demonstrate causality. So a confounding variable would be a variable that may actually be the cause. Okay, so if we're expecting one variable to cause another, a confounding variable would be a different separate variable that might actually be what is causing the change in the dependent variables. So true experiments test causal claims, and correlation analysis and surveys can test associations. They can test for relationships, but not necessarily detect causality. So a variable is a characteristic of an individual or group that can be measured or observed. So many things can be variables. It depends on what you are studying and who you're studying. But demographic factors are variables, so like age, gender, socioeconomic status, and so on. And then other variables could be like attitudes or health outcomes or all sorts of different things. So variables can have a temporal order, so they can be ordered in a time frame, and they can be measurable or observable. So in quantitative research, we have lots of different types of variables. So the independent variable is the variable that is probably causing the outcomes, or at least we're hypothesizing that it will cause the outcomes. A dependent variable, those are the outcomes that are caused or changed by the independent variables. A predictor is used to predict an outcome of interest, like in survey method studies. So there might be some aspect, some quality that we can say is a predictor of this outcome. So an outcome is a result or outcome of interest in survey method studies, similar to dependent variables. Intervening or mediating variables are variables that stand between the independent and dependent variables. So like if we see that an independent variable does have an effect on a dependent variable, but only when this other variable is also present, then that would be a mediating variable. So the independent variable affects the mediating variable, which affects the dependent variable. But if we remove that mediating variable, then the independent variable does not directly affect the dependent variable. A moderating variable is a predictor variable that affects the relationship between the independent and other predictor variables. So moderating means it is moderating the relationship between the independent variable and any other predictor variables. And then control refers to variables that are measured and statistically controlled. So if there are variables that we think might affect the dependent variable, if we measure it sufficiently, we can statistically control for those effects of that variable, and we can control for it to statistically see what is the true effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable when we remove the effects of that controlled variable. Okay, so what is theory in quantitative research? So theory is a scientific prediction or explanation of what the researcher expects to find. So theories are developed all sorts of different ways. So it could be developed through qualitative research, which is more exploratory. So in qualitative research, you explore the topic, and depending on what's found, you might develop a theory and then test hypotheses based on that theory quantitatively. Or theory can emerge from quantitative research, so similar types of quantitative research done over time that where certain relationships emerge and that could develop into a theory. So there's different ways where theories are developed, but then when there is a theory, then that can be used as the foundation of further research because now there's an expected relationship between variables. So a theory involves different constructs or variables, and there's a stated relationship of what is expected to happen with the interaction between those constructs or variables. So micro level theories are theories that only really apply to a very specific place or small group of people, or maybe only during a certain segment of time. Macro level theories are broader in scale, they apply to a larger population. And then a meso level theory would be a theory that is linking and forming a bridge between the micro and macro level theories. So it's offering some kind of connection or explanation for, based on this macro level theory, here's why, or here's how this micro level theory fits in, or here's why we have this theory based on, so it's just a way to connect micro and macro level theories in a logical way that makes sense. So ways that we express the use of theory in quantitative research is they will be expressed clearly in the hypotheses and the research questions, depending on which you use or both. But the hypotheses should clearly demonstrate the theory that is being applied, because the hypotheses should be based on that theory and the relationships that are expected based on the theory. There also could be a series of if-then statements. So those would explain why you would expect an independent variable to influence the dependent variable. And the reason you expect that is based on the theory that you are building your research study around. And then my favorite way for expressing theory or for reading papers where they're expressing theory is visually. So you can give a visual model that really helps make the sometimes complicated interactions among variables more visually appealing and easier to interpret, easier to understand than sometimes it can be just in a written form. So creating some kind of flow chart or graphic, some kind of visual model to demonstrate the theory and the connections between the different variables is really helpful. So where in your proposal or your manuscript should this be? You'd put it toward the beginning of the study or toward the beginning of your paper, like in the introduction. So you should be discussing literature, and in your discussion of literature, you can be drawing in the different theories that could apply in the area that you're studying. And then you would land on the theory that you want to pursue and support that with evidence from the literature about why do you think that theory is the most relevant for your study. So you'd put it towards the beginning and discuss it mixed in kind of with your literature review. And you would use the theory deductively, meaning that the theory would be broader in scope than your study. And then you would kind of boil that theory down to fit your study so that your study would be providing evidence in support of the validity of that theory. The theory should provide the framework for your study and will help you write your research questions and hypotheses and design your data collection procedures. So it should be clearly stated what the theory is, why you chose that theory, and how it's relevant in your study, and how that is guiding your research questions or hypotheses and your data collection. So when you are writing, when you're writing your manuscript or your proposal, you want to look to the literature. Of course, it's where we always start. So you're going to do a literature review and examine the literature in the specific discipline and find whatever relevant papers there are, other studies and things that are related to your topic and to other kind of neighboring topics. So it's possible that that theory hasn't been applied before to your specific topic, which means that's a great place, that's a great study for you to be conducting because it hasn't been done yet. So you might find application of the theory in your specific area, or you might not, and you want to also branch out to kind of neighboring areas, as long as those studies are able to help you support the use of that theory for your study. Then you'll ask a question that bridges the independent and dependent variables based on that theory. And then when you're ready to write, you're going to name the theory. You're going to give credit to where that theory originated. So whoever is the author who first talked about that theory, make sure you give credit where credit is due. You will identify different topics where it's been applied in previous research. So in other disciplines or within your discipline, but in different topics. Identify propositions or hypotheses based on that theory, state the variables, so the independent and dependent variables based on that theory, and give a rationale for why that theory is the best one, that's the best choice for you to base your study on, and why you agree with that study, or you might refer to the literature and discuss why it has or hasn't worked before in different disciplines, and why you think it's the most appropriate in this particular study. All right, that's all I have for you in this video. Thanks so much for watching.
Okay.
Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk about the use of theory and...
Okay, so there we are. I believe somehow, the question we are discussing earlier has also been answered in this clip. But what do I pick in this clip? And probably I make a summary of a few things, but then I also open this up for you also to make some few comments on what you have been able to pick. I think what stood out here for me is question that where should the theory be? Either in my proposal or in my paper that I'm writing, where should the theory be? Where is the place for theory? And I think the presenter tells us that the theory almost is everywhere, because it says it should be towards the beginning, should also be used deductively, you know, it should guide the framework for your study, and should be the organizing model for your study. And of course, she tells us that in that section where she says the model, the theory should be the organizing model for your study, she tells us that should be able to capture some of the questions, or you should be able to use it to create some of the questions and the hypotheses that you're going to investigate and test, but also should be informing our data collection procedures. I think for me that stood out very well. Maybe also the other thing that I picked out from this video is that where is my beginning point? And from the presenter, she tells us that should start by examining literature. And this is not really very different from what John shared with us earlier on. You may start by examining literature. In the literature, you're looking at prior studies conducted in that particular area where you are interested in doing your study. And of course, from the presentations, you clearly said you should be able to, after conducting those studies, looking at the previous studies, should also be able to ask questions that could possibly relate the dependent and the independent variable together. And possibly after that, from the presentation, it comes strong with that you should now be able to name that theory, the origin, and where it has been applied, and so on. So for me, that is what stood out. And I want to again come back to you and ask you, what has touched you? What have you picked from this clip? It was short and brief. And I think in those few minutes, you've been able to learn something. So I open it up so that you can also not necessarily tell us what you have heard from there, but also your experience, if at all you can. So I open it up and I see some Can I see if there are some questions here? Chat. Okay. I seem not to see any, but now I just want to open this up. If you have Michael, I can see your hand is up. Kindly unmute and speak.
Thank you, Joseph. And this was really answering the question. From the video, I've found out that if your study is about a causal relationship, or it is about an impact of certain variables to another, then you have to use a theory that is related to causal effects.
Okay.
If you bring that theory that is related to relationships, then at the end, you'll find it very difficult to connect it with your research, because you are trying to justify the causal relationship you have in your research using that theory from the beginning, or you are using the theory to justify the relationships between the variables, flat relationship without any cause. So if you are to justify what is in your research, and then the theory comes with a different prediction, then it becomes a very difficult situation. So I learned that we have to first see where our research, the direction of our research, so that we choose a theory that fits that direction, and then we use our research to justify, we use our research to justify or to support that theory. Thank you so much, Joseph.
Wow, thank you, Michael. And somebody, as you were speaking, somebody was now texting me here and is asking, so what is a causal relationship? One question is creating another. So what's a causal relationship? So would you want to respond before Kayemba Jonah comes in? Michael?
Okay, thank you, Joseph. A causal relationship is like a certain situation has been caused by an other. For example, when you say, John was talking about discipline and performance of students. Discipline can cause performance of students, like good discipline causing a better performance. That one becomes a causal relationship. The relationship between discipline and performance is causal, because performance is being caused by discipline. So that is simply what we call a causal relationship. It comes from cause. Then if I may bring out this one of impact before I get another question, there is where you find that there is an effect, and that effect must be measured, that impact. Sometimes the relationship between a variable and another is that a change in a discipline causes a certain change in performance, which means there is an impact, and that impact should be measured either in a percentage or otherwise, so it should be measured. So the difference between a causal relationship and an impact is that an impact should be measured. It can be measured. That's how far I can go. Thank you so much, Joseph.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your submission, and we really appreciate. As I keep telling members that at this point, in this 1 hour, we just want to share our views and our opinions. And the beauty here is that we have the seniors here. So where we have mixed up things, where we got things twisted, they will always clarify some of these things. So don't sit there with your views and keep them to yourself. It's better they shock you now that what you know is wrong before you're shocked at the final stage of your journey. It will be very devastating. Thank you very much, James. And our brother Jonah, you had put up your hand. So it's your turn now.
Yes, Joseph.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I want to pick from where that colleague has just mentioned in respect to what I've picked from the clip and from our previous discussion. The theory is supposed to be, because it's supposed to be guiding that in all our steps. I also remember from taking a leaf from our previous discussion that where necessary, you may find that your different objectives are being formed by more than one theory. If you are to derive form your hypotheses or the research question, depending on whatever you've chosen to have. So in this, to me, it means that if you are to design your questioning and your data collection tools, they should have a big correlation in the direction of your theory. That is why it was further stated or shared, I think it was last week, that when you're reading the depth of those theories, you may even find the kind of question that were used previously to inform your study in one or the other. So, getting an appropriate theory, one depends on what exactly your study is and what you want what you are intending to find out or to investigate about. And this is very, very important to inform your direction. This is something I wanted to mention about in respect to what I've heard from the clip and then my other experience. Thank you.
Yes. Wow. Thank you very much. You've mentioned a number of things there, and I want to really appreciate your submission and also encourage the rest of us to make your submissions. We still have about 12 minutes. I have a colleague here, John Lubale Ronald, saying the phenomenon you make of the background to your area of research informs the choice of your study. And I have not understood this statement. I don't know if others have understood, but I want to invite Gideon Lubale to clarify this statement. Gideon, can we hear from you directly?
Yes, good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, brother.
So I'm thinking that actually the phenomenon you make or that area of interest to the researcher is what informs the choice of the theory that you should guide your investigation. This is one of the issues that I actually make out of the presentation we have just watched. And until you do that, after you have done that, is when now you get into the systematic literature review to identify the previous studies that have been conducted in that area. What are the variables that were considered? To me, that is what I think should really inform the choice of the theory. Thank you very much, brother.
Okay, thank you so much. And before you go away,
Yes,
just think you're saying the phenomenon informs the choice of theory, and then but there are those ones who start by reading theories first, then they come and find. I mean, what do you make of that? Some people start with theories, then they come backwards. Others start with they identifying the area of study, then they go and look for theories. I mean, what is your comment on that?
thank you very much, brother. According to me, there are actually so many to carry out a research in that area. It is that motivation that actually it's that that it is that area of interest of that you come to identify the contributions of the scholars in that area. I don't know whether I'm very clear there. What motivated you as a researcher to conduct a research about something? It is that something. Okay, borrowing some kind of information from the previous sessions we have gone through, the background, the ontology, what is the problem out there, is what I'm referring to as a motivator. And then when you look at epistemology, what do we have to learn? You get that kind of arrangement. And then the two combined should enable the researcher to position or to identify that problem that's my thinking.
Thank you very much. The network was a little bit disturbing, and somehow we lost some of the good insights there that you're trying to give us. But nevertheless, we must appreciate you for your contribution. Thank you very much. I have here somebody saying, I am in my infancy stage and my research direction is anchored in constructivism, implications of quantitative research. Have I picked rightly that with quantitative research, you have hypothesis, not conceptual framework? I am very happy that what you're asking is part of what Professor Julius emphasized some time back, and is listening. I am happy to inform you that when he's making his submission, he might, I think we should request that he touches again some of these things so that you'll be helped. This is Esther Chirabo. Okay. Okay. Do I have any other okay, I have so many mics on, and I want to assume that all these people are ready to make a submission. Can I start with the Mr. I don't know, because the titles are not there. I might be calling you Mr. when you're a professor. Mr. Chibirige. The floor is yours. Yes, please.
Incidentally, I'm just joining right now. I could be lost where I were because I'm just reading the use of theory and quantitative research. Maybe let me attend for the time being.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Your request is granted. I have Mr. Lokedi Emmanuel. Mr. Lokedi Emmanuel. The floor is yours. And your network, I think, also has issues. I can see you're talking and we are not hearing. Okay. It looks like we're having challenges with network this morning. Okay, as we wait, maybe we can hear from okay. I have Mr. Walakira Hussein.
I'm
Yeah, we
sorry,
can hear you.
I've just joined.
Okay. We seem to have issues there. Okay, colleagues, we have about 4 minutes, and I had another short clip which has about 3 minutes, but I think we cannot play that one now. But we have looked at theory in quantitative research, and this is just an introduction, and probably we might have some work on the same for some time. But in this 2.5 minutes remaining, there is no way we can conclude this session without hearing from our sisters. And I know Teresa has something to say. Teresa, can you represent the gender? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Shafiq. Morning, everyone. I'm really not going to say much, but someone was saying, how do you know which area to study? You know, sometimes you first need to understand, especially now, if you're doing a research, you must know which area. For example, I am in accounting. So if I'm searching which area I should study, it has to be in accounting. And then, of course, you have to look at currently what is the situation and what are the problems as far as accounting is concerned. So you do a lot of reading, look at what people are researching on. Currently, of course, you look at the recent research and find out what are the areas that are still having gaps, look at different journals and see the recommended areas for further research. And then having identified what area is having a gap, then someone asks, then how do you know which theories? For me, I believe you must have first identified the gap that exists out there. Then after identifying which gap is actually existing in your area of specialization, because I can't say, for example, Teresa, I'm in accounting, then I want to research in human resource. No. So my area and the interest of articles where I want to read has to be around accounting and find out what is missing out there. What is the problem? Which gap need to be filled in? What are organizations suffering that you need to bring in certain areas to assist them solve their accounting problems, for example? Then having identified that gap, what are some probable ways of solving them? When you find out what are probable ways of solving that problem, then you need to find out what theories can explain that solution. So you read on different theories that can assist you. Of course, you can look at what have other people done in that area, what are the theories that they have used. Of course, you may find you have different, for example, variables or determinants of that problem. But as you keep on reading different theories that can explain it, you actually end up realizing either those variables can be added or can be reduced. And then there you are able to know now, these are the theories that can explain my study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Teresa, and
Joseph,
yes,
I just want
Prof.
to allow me add on to what Teresa has submitted. While you are looking for a gap in your area, it has to be something you're passionate about. The gap may be in, let's say, audit expectation gap. And for me, that is not my interest, but it's still in the accounting field. That may not be my passion. The point I want to put across here is, in addition to what Teresa has said, find your passion in your discipline and build on it. When you research around something that you're passionate about, it's easy to maneuver. It's easy to maneuver, and you'll be able to sail through very fast. I don't want to eat into the next session. Bye-bye.
Wow. For those who do not know, that one's called Professor Laura. And I don't want to dilute anything there. Maybe we need to conclude the session, and allow me to read this one here. How does the theory inform data collection, and how can a researcher relate it to the methodology? This is the question which is there, and I just want to borrow only 1 minute from the next session. And in this 1 minute, allow me, I don't know, the people are asking, they have 3 direct messages here, and they're asking that they have taken long from, and they have not been hearing from Professor Joseph Ntai. So allow me, I don't know if he's here, to welcome him to say 1 or 2 things as we close the session. That is if he's on, and if he's not on, then we might have to close. I am scrolling through and I see.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joseph. And I must really thank the students for their contributions, especially in this first 1 hour before the experts come in to explain most of those things. I know that once in a while, especially when we are discussing issues that relate to research, like theory and its use in research, especially if you're a novice researcher and you're just starting, you might even get confused, right? You may not know where to start and how to go along. As I've already said before, I think it's always important to start by looking at papers which are probably called systematic literature reviews, meta-analytic reviews, state-of-the-art papers. Those papers will tell you how far the discipline has, especially if they are very recent. They will tell you how far research in a certain area has advanced, and the gaps that exist for future research. If you discover that some of the aspects that the researchers are talking about are somehow related to the reality that you want to explain, then you might as well jump in there, right, and start searching for more information so that you build your argument, because really in research at the PhD level, even other levels, you are really dealing with a thesis, and the thesis is an argument that you are advancing. Now, the way you are advancing it is might be a little bit different from the way others have advanced their arguments. And that's where your contribution to knowledge will actually come in. So when Teresa and my colleague Lola come in and they say that you must actually research in an area where you have passion, I agree with them, because if you've not been reading, right, if you've not studied and you don't have background information and knowledge in that particular area, how are you going to contribute knowledge to that particular discipline? So at least you must be grounded in the area. And then you lean on the shoulders of the tallest guy, if you can get one. If there are many, that's okay. You can actually stand on their shoulders so that you are able to see very far and add at least something. And what you add might actually be small because knowledge grows incrementally. So you don't have to really aim at having something that is very huge so that you want to show people that you really have a very huge model that you are going to test out at the end of the day. So I think that, Joseph, that's what I can say at the moment, but I really must thank you for your contributions. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Prof. And we are very happy. People were wondering, they're asking me whether you're available. And I said, okay, let me confirm that you're available. Thank you very much, Professor Laura, for your contribution this morning. I don't know how it worked out. I knew at some point I was going to invite you, and it's good you came in. Our time is eaten up already, and we wouldn't want to waste any more time. At this moment, allow me now hand over this mic to our Chief Planner, Dr. Ahmed Walgembe. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for running the first session ably and very, very well. We, of course, want to confirm whether I'm clear from that side.
Yes, you are clear.
Clear enough.
Okay. Members, you're welcome to our main session of discussion. We really appreciate your commitment and joining in early from close to 2 a.m. Some people start joining, and to me, I think that is extraordinary. Joseph, thank you for the student symposium, the discussion that we had. Of course, it was quite interesting, and trying to bring back the issues you have been going through in the last 3 weeks of discussion. I'd like to appreciate Professor Julius Chikoma and Professor Aurora Lobia for the time they have spent in trying to enable us understand better and better the concept of theory and methods, and of course unpacking concepts, especially in qualitative approach. We appreciate, and we are continuing with the discussion. For those who have just joined, this is a platform that puts together a number of PhD scholars and students from various universities. Normally, just add. Therefore, we appreciate all those from the local universities here in Uganda, Makerere University, Chambogo, Uganda Matters, Gulu, UCU, IUIU, and many others. We appreciate you being part of the panel. Those from STEMA, we really thank you for always being part of the panel of the Then those from outside the different countries, I had my sister from Teresa from Moi University. So we have team from my universities, Nairobi, universities in Kenya, universities in Tanzania, South African universities, especially in Zimbabwe, the West African universities, North African universities, Asia, I'm not sure rather is on today, and many other continents. So we really appreciate your support. It's an international platform, and we think that this platform really plays a great role in supporting PhD students.
We are still continuing with our discussion. We had a few issues in changes in communication. We communicated, added the component of qualitative research analysis software. But after talking to the main person, the two main people in charge of the session, we are going to continue with the previous discussion on connecting methods and theory in dissertational research. We shall be able to embark on analysis as we proceed, and then we possibly move on. We really want to deeply thank our senior colleagues, especially beginning with those who are taking us through in the last 3 weeks. We are coming to a month of discussing these issues, but most importantly, Professor Julius Chikoma. Professor Chikoma, who is Deputy Director of Research, Graduate School, Mackay University. I know he has always a very busy week. Sometimes you try to reach him in the week and you can't actually get him. But he says, I will get time on a Sunday morning and I share with the PhD students. Professor, we don't take this for granted. Professor Chikoma is a highly ranked qualitative researcher on the continent. And we have said sometime back, those who want to use case studies. Professor Chikoma, his PhD was largely on case studies. He has published widely on case studies. And I think he's among the best that you can get on the continent when it comes to qualitative research analysis. So qualitative research. Professor, we appreciate your commitment over time on giving us knowledge in the same area. And I think we have picked a lot since you started. We know you have made a contribution. Professor was once a deputy principal in School of Humanities, and I think he made his contribution there. Professor, we really thank you for that. And then Professor Rola Orobia, who is the Deputy Dean, Faculty of Graduate Studies at Mackay University Business School. Professor Rola, we congratulate you. She has just got her new term unopposed for a new term of office. Professor Rola, we congratulate you upon your unopposed nomination to the position of Deputy Dean again at the graduate school. And I think Professor Rola is purely in charge of the PhD students. So for those who are on this platform and you want to have anything about your PhD studies, supervisors, etc., you are studying at MOBS, Professor Rola, who is now part of our key main speakers during these sessions, she's really in charge. So Professor, we don't take that for granted, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate your energy. We know that God will reward you for this. Qualitative research doesn't have any single plan for payment for these people, but you know, they really work out of the ambitions to support and contribute to community development. This is well respected and deserved. Allow me to appreciate other senior colleagues online, Dr. Austin Mwanje, Dr. Francis Eboyu, Dr. Gret Sheyune, Dr. Hassan Bashir, Dr. Nkurunziza Gideon, and many others. And lastly, our own Professor Joseph Mutai, for the last 2.5 years, coming to 3 years. Professor Tai has been always on the platform. He will be the one to start the session at 3 a.m. He will be the one to close the session at 6:30 a.m. And all that contribution, we really appreciate it. So for today, allow me now invite our main presenters. As I normally say, we shall at the end of these sessions get all the slides from the presenters and share on the platform, and also we shall be able to engage them further in case you have anything that you need in form of support. We appreciate that. All right, Professor Chikoma and Professor Rola Orobia, allow me send the microphone to you and say, I think we can start from here and enjoy the discussions. Thank you, and you're welcome, Prof.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed Walgembe, for those very kind remarks about me and other colleagues today. And I hope I will do a good job to deserve those very kind remarks that you've made. I also thank the moderator of the earlier session. And I think that's my friend, Joseph Elasso. I joined in a bit earlier when the student session was beginning, and then I had some challenges. I got off. I had wanted to really follow, but I was not able to follow. But anyhow, I think the vibrancy in the conversations just speaks to the interest and passion the group here has for the discussion that we have here, or that we started 3 weeks ago. Similarly, let me also thank the other organizers or the people behind this platform for always thinking of ways to continue to maintain interest of PhD students far and wide, to have a community where they can hold conversations consistently and build their work collectively. So Professor Ntai and your colleagues, we appreciate this. It contributes to the menu that PhD the universities represented here enjoy. My colleague, co-presenter for this particular segments of looking at theory and methodology in research, Professor Laura Olubias. Thank you and good morning, and I'm hoping you are tuned in. You did a wonderful job the previous session, and we are going to continue to build on that. This morning I will do more of the talking than yourself, so I envy your position of quietly just listening and maybe coming in once in a while. But generally, participants, as we indicated right at the beginning of this series of conversations around theory and method in research, we made mention and made a commitment that the sessions will be handled in 4 segments, or what we called then units. And the 4 units, we indicated that 1 unit to set us off would be devoted mainly to speak about conceptual and theoretical frameworks in framing the dissertation research, but also research generally. But the context in which we are speaking here predominantly is for people who are struggling, grappling with the realities of carrying out a dissertation for PhD. So most of the examples, we really put them in that context. So that was the first unit we discussed, and I'm sure it gave some insights on how to think about theoretical framing in your work, but also as distinguished from conceptual frameworks, because sometimes there has been that sort of conflation of the 2 ideas or the 2 issues. I hope that first session, if it did nothing else, it should have been able to really tease out that distinction. The second aspect of this series of conversation, we dedicated it to integrating theories in the dissertation and papers for publication. And I think we spent about two sessions just teasing out, what that means, because we work with many theories, but putting them into one coherent piece of work so that it's seen as a result of one study, not multiple studies. That's easy. So we voted 2 weeks just to see the different ways that researchers grapple with how to put together a range of theoretical ideas that are informing their work. And we really pointed out as well regarding this question of range of theories. We also pointed out something very crucial, especially conceiving research from a perspective of, like looking at research as how you look at the layers of research, layers of an onion, where we said that. But when you undertake research, it's like peeling layers of an onion. And therefore, even theoretical issues come in many levels. And we saw that there are 3 distinctive layers or levels of theory that one needs to be able to appreciate and how they operate and what are the issues that actually distinguish them. The macro layers of theory, or macro levels of theory, the broader brush, which look at global things or issues very broadly. Also saw mid-range kind of theories, as well as content level theories, which we called then micro theories. So these are some of the things so far we've been able to discuss on this platform as we try to engage in a conversation around the role of theory and the role of theory in research practice, and especially how it connects with methodology. Now, this morning, we shall move to the third element or the third unit of these conversations. And thanks, Dr. Ahmed, for correcting the communication. Today we are looking at the connection itself between theory and methods in your study. And next, or after this, then we will look at the last part where we look at the role, these digital developments play in methods, in how we deal with the questions of methods. That will be after we finished looking at the actual connections that we need to articulate between a theoretical lens and a methodological approach that you are using in your study. So that is what we are going to discuss this morning. And I think I should let me start by using the slides in order to display my talk around this question of connecting theory and method. Just a minute, let me just get my slide. I hope I can quickly find it. So, I think I should be looking for, okay. Can we all see the screen? I just want someone who can see to just give me that feedback, and then I'm good to go.
We can see.
Yes, we can see. We can see, Professor. Thank you.
Okay, good. So this morning, colleagues and participants, I want us to just pay attention to, these issues of theory and method in a dissertation research, especially as I will be talking as I will be giving you experiences, especially in terms of making sure that there is coherence. There is coherence and there is a disconnection. There's a connection that helps one to see the logical flow of argument from your forays into the literature, the key ideas that are guiding how you view the issues you want to study, and then the methodological choices that you are making in order to attack or in order to address the problem of your research and how to actually conduct the research. So I will of course background this with some issues that keep on preoccupying scholars in terms of what are the key issues, why is this even important, why should we pay attention? After all, once I have the theory, I just get the next available tool for me to get the information, and then get the information and write up the results. However, there's some important background to keep in mind as we think through and as we talk through this question of connecting theory and method. Of course, we must remember and just note that for some time, scholars in all these different disciplines, the humanities, the arts, the social and behavioral sciences, there's continuing and increasing interest in people undertaking forms of research that utilize qualitative methods in order to really enhance the understanding of complex phenomena they are studying, social phenomena they are studying. So increasingly, we are seeing more and more of that move towards predominantly wanting to engage in some form of qualitative inquiry. So this turn has affected a broad range of disciplines, and you'll find that, for example, we find that one form of inquiry, narrative inquiry, as a form of qualitative inquiry, has begun to move from the margins to the mainstream of established scholarly traditions. So the point is that increasingly we'll find that more and more of these forms of qualitative inquiry that used to be once in a while you just see one publication, once in a while you hear someone speak about qualitative. It is increasingly becoming mainstream. You are increasingly finding that even traditional journals that were mainly focusing on quantitative issues have started increasingly now giving more space to other forms of inquiry that fall under qualitative inquiry. And we must keep in mind that qualitative inquiry is a broad range, houses a broad range of qualitative traditions of inquiry. And here I'm just giving one example, but there is a wide range of qualitative forms of inquiry. And just to be, to avoid doubt, how this has proliferated in the different disciplines. You see, in economics, for instance, I would definitely refer you to some of, the works that could actually give you a very, very, more insights around, how qualitative logic and qualitative ways of thinking about research has actually entered, for instance, the discipline of economics. There are some of those references I've given you, because sometimes when economists talk and they use the emphasis is, or at least they predominantly engage with figures, or at least they cannot end their talk or without using some kind of figures. It may give you the impression that non-quantitative elements are not important. But some of those studies, some of those works there speak to the fact that these disciplines have opened up more and more. They continue to open up more and more qualitative forms of inquiry. And closer to home, home here being that mostly this platform has been, set up from or by, colleagues that are from the management, business areas of inquiry. So even in that field, which is really an interdisciplinary field, I must say, we see the theory underpinning, these areas of study, business, management, organization. We're increasingly finding a lot of work that utilizes quantitative traditions, as some of those examples are put there will attest to, be it in terms of studying organizational performance, studying strategy, and all other aspects of organization and management theory. Qualitative forms of inquiry have become commonplace. But obviously that doesn't take away the fact that there are these debates that propel us to think much more carefully and be critical about, the role that these forms of inquiry will do in our particular forms of research that we're doing. Because we've found that as these works continue to be available or to have some presence in the areas, we find that they are becoming present, but against a background where, the use of laboratory experimentation, systematic surveys, structured and fixed response questionnaires, the use of such forms of doing research in how to probe about how people think about events and so on, have been predominant. And yet we find that such methods, or at least the argument for qualitative researchers, the argument continues to be that such methods miss crucial aspects because the researcher, rather than the subjects, set the parameters of the responses. So obviously, when we do research based on the other modes of inquiry that are predominantly based on experiments, surveys, and so on, there are those issues, there are those concerns that then the researcher, dominates and is the the one who knows what they need to know, and the other people are just giving information. There is no other role they have, or even the researcher themselves seem to appear like they are very neutral about what they are doing, and they are not, influencing, subjectively influencing the process. And also the other continuing argument for, opening up to other forms of inquiry beyond quantitative or opening up to qualitative is a failure to draw explicit attention to, issues of philosophy and, ontology, epistemology of the theories or the theoretical lenses that are being applied in a study vis-a-vis a discussion of methodological implication of those epistemology and ontological elements in those studies. And this leaves the impression that such considerations are not relevant in the design of research methods. So really, these continue to be important points against which qualitative researchers decide to intentionally move beyond utilizing these predominantly qualitatively oriented work or positivistically oriented modes of thinking about research. And so against that background, it becomes then essential that we pay attention on those elements in the way we proceed to do research, informed by a particular theoretical framework that we have chosen, but understand that that theoretical framework that we choose, of course, has implications in terms of in terms of the focus on what we study. It will definitely guide, it orients us to what we then will find important for study, and also what and who and the stance, in other words, the position we take in terms of who defines and what is important, who defines what is important in the research and it does the research. So that's important, because then and underlying that is the fact that we will, depending on our theoretical lens, it will help us to see how best to position ourselves in this whole research reality, without just making, assumptions that we have no role as researchers, or that the researched are just objects for our study, without also recognizing that in fact they can play a bigger role, or they need to play a bigger role in how the study is proceeding. So in order to deepen the quality of, there's a reputation there, in order to deepen the quality of the scholarship, theoretical choices as well as the reasoning behind their consistency, not constants, must be made explicit. So that's if we are going to be able to come up with a study that is really of good quality, or that espouses the rigor that a doctorate must have, then it is important that as we think and as we articulate our theoretical frameworks and the choices we make in order to do the research in terms of methodology and research approach, those choices, we must make them explicit. They must be clear and they must be articulated. When someone writes or reads your work, they should be able to see this clearly come out in terms of why you think this kind of lens is important, and how this lens, what this lens means for the kind of approaches that you want to use to study whatever you are going to study. So in order for me to demonstrate how important this is, or why this is so crucial, and how can this very runaway statement like that be actualized in a real study, and what are the mechanics that a student or a researcher sort of engages in order to ensure that that connection is clear and eventually is transparent in a study. What I will do, and with your indulgence, I will ask that you allow me to speak from my experiences that I have had over, I think, the last, when you count COVID, I think then they will be almost coming 5 years, but we started before COVID. That was around 2018, 19. When we actually decided to come up with what we then called, me and my supervisee doctoral students, we came up with a PhD forum, what we call a PhD forum, something like this, but which was within our own school, where I was administratively the leader, but also for these particular students, I was their supervisor. So we wanted to have a space where we can be able to grapple with these particular issues. Because I had asked them, I was alive to the need for this, because even in my own dissertation, I had been, made to specifically be explicit about these connections. If I was to ever, come up with a good quality dissertation. So we also wanted to do the same. I wanted to do the same with my students. And so we decided to have we decided to have some seminars. I think we will meet once or twice a week, just grappling with, first of all, ensuring that you have the right theoretical framework for your study. And then later, how that sort of works to influence or to decide how you use that to decide on the appropriate methodology. So I will be sharing with you case studies in order to make that point. Maybe it would be too much, but it would have been nice, but I think it would be too much to take you through all the 5 doctoral dissertations that sort of, did this, in which dissertations this was done and how it was done. These 5 doctoral dissertations adopted, and I must say at the outset here, that these dissertations adopted a similar theoretical framework. In other words, in terms of theoretical lens that each of these persons was using in their study was the same, with different slants, but it was broadly the same. However, each of them used a different methodological tradition. So that's where now it becomes important to see how these connections, even distinguish studies that are studying very different things, but at the same time, sort of connect studies at a theoretical level that are looking at different issues. So, as you can see from that slide, there are 3 of the students applied or adopted what is referred to as a narrative form of inquiry, a specific version of qualitative research utilizing.
Excuse me, Julius. Is it possible for you to make the letters bigger than what they appear?
Okay, because my screen is okay. Let me see.
Zoom it.
Zoom it. Okay, I was going to just make the. Is that better?
There is a plus and minus on your extreme, I think, right?
Oh,
if you just click on plus.
Okay, that's fine. Just a minute. Oh, is that better? Or it's still the same?
Professor, it is still the same.
What about that?
The same.
I think you can proceed in the interest of time.
Okay, sorry about that. I was not even aware that this is too small, because from my screen here, I've made the whole thing big and it reads well. But anyhow, what is on the screen mainly is just telling you that the examples I want to use in how to approach the question of connecting a theoretical lens to a methodology is based on 5 doctoral dissertations, which adopted a similar theoretical framework, but they are connected to different qualitative traditions, which include 1, narrative inquiry, and 2, phenomenology. Now, of the 5 doctoral students, 3 adopted the narrative inquiry, and then 2 adopted phenomenology. And I must also say that for the narrative inquiry, all of these students have now graduated. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, 1 or 2 of them might even be on this platform. For the ones who have adopted phenomenology, 1 has graduated and 1 will be graduating, I think, the next graduation. So that's the example. Those are the basis of my conversation with you around connection of method and theory in a real dissertation study. I will use, for purposes of, I think, time, and also I will just adopt 1 case study. And this case study, I will use one of them who used narrative inquiry. And this case study is a study which was on integrating cognitive and social cultural perspectives, learning among university students and employed individuals. And the author is now Dr. Eboyo, 2023. This particular work by Eboyo really used a theoretical framework based on 2 theoretical perspectives. The figure 2 is missing there. The 2 perspectives, 1, a cognitive perspective to learning, and a social-cultural theoretical perspective to learning. And based on those 2 views of thinking about learning, the study advanced a complementary view about what learning is and what this means for learning in classroom and workplace environment. Remember this study from that title, a boy was interested in looking at how students in a classroom environment learn and what are some of the issues that create active learning possible, and that lead to some kind of creative performance in what they do, as well as looking at those who are learning at their places of work. So, meaning that he was interested in sitting with people, investigating employed individuals and how, they were actually learning what they actually were doing. So together, the theories that were used in this study provided insights into the relationship between learning and particular types of settings. I think that's the case study, and I think that's where I end in terms of, I think, the slides. But I'm just going to explain a number of things, and then we can pick up the conversation from there. First of all, these 2 perspectives, let me just tell you what he did. First of all, I asked, and we insisted with him together, that we try to understand and articulate the 2 perspectives in terms of what is it that they stand on in helping you to understand the topic. And so that we can imagine a coherent theoretical framework. And this coherent theoretical framework meant that this student goes and reads around these 2 perspectives and understands what they do. For instance, in terms of understanding the issue of the cognitive approach, this particular frame of thinking about learning based on a cognitive approach, he found that the cognitive perspective really views thinking as people are learning in classrooms is a skill which is determined internally by individuals, representation of knowledge in memory. So it is more of something that is more internal to the person who is learning and actively acting on their learning, and according to the cognitive perspective. And according to this perspective, thinking and learning definitely are disembedded and are disembedded. So in a way, they don't actually account adequately for lived experiences which are part of the environment in which these learners are. So one of the criticisms that he found, or the limitations that he found in trying to understand active learning and how that leads to creative performance in a classroom environment, the limitation he found with just proceeding with just that cognitive framework, which is important in understanding how individual learners actually form cognitive structures in the memory. But then it fails to account for, the environment in which the learning is taking place. That was true for the classroom environment as well as the workplace environment. It fails to account for the contributions these environments in which the learning is taking place, how they actually contribute to the learning and how the knowledge is structured in the mind of the learner in order for them to actively learn, but also to act on the learning by performing and coming up with creative acts. Yeah. So that was part of the downside of that perspective, because it was more emphasizing internal attributes at the expense of social and cultural contributions to thinking and activity. That review of the literature helped him to appreciate that, yeah, there is something that he can pick up from, such as a way of thinking, but at the same time, it was not enough, because it was failing to identify the social sources of how knowledge is represented in the mind and how those social influences, make whatever representation is in one's mind possible. So he then looked towards another theoretical perspective, the social cultural approach, or the social constructivist approach, which from reading this literature, he found that it emphasizes the social sources and how the individuals construct knowledge. And so this framework helped him, in addition to having social origins, in understanding that in addition to having social origins, the contribution of knowledge is also taken to be a social act. So the construction of knowledge, the knowledge that someone develops while learning within a classroom setting or within a learning environment outside of classroom, like a workplace, is actually a social act. It is not just about what is happening in the mental upstairs of the learner, but also the core construction of the knowledge within the environment in which this is taking place. So it then struck a chord with this with this theory and the earlier theory, in the sense that this particular theory has an added contribution to understanding the issues about learning that he was interested in, from both the interpersonal interactions and more distant social and cultural contexts which the learner is steeped in. And this perspective emphasizes those perspectives. And it shows that there is some kind of reciprocal relationship in the learning that takes place in terms of what the individual learner has in their mind, but also what the social situation or the social context is contributing to the knowledge that is being constructed. But there was also a bit of a limitation with that thinking, in the sense that when you just use it independent of the cognitive dimension, which was more of the internal aspects of how knowledge is being constructed within the individual, then the social cultural perspective would not account for the forms of knowledge that are constructed, and the types of knowledge that are constructed in these unique individuals, and therefore how these individuals actually deploy these forms of knowledge in some form of direction, where how do they act on that knowledge, either to creatively perform in classes or to fail to really be to put that knowledge constructed in a creative use. So he saw that even though each of these theories sort of implied sort of different epistemological leanings and interests, he saw that together they could give him an opportunity to look at the relationship between internal processes of the mind and the external sources of knowledge together in a complementary manner. Remember, I said that this study was really trying to integrate those two perspectives to learn. So he found some common basis for using a broad framework that takes into account the individual and the social. And collectively, he decided to approach this work using a social cultural perspective. And he found it useful in helping him to address the processes of learning, and how this framework could actually help him to study those elements of active learning and their mediated link to creative performance, how people end up being creative in what they do with the knowledge they got from classes. So this broad framework called the socio-cultural perspective is the one that sort of became the overriding theoretical lens. And as I mentioned to you, this is the the theoretical framework that we spent time in the seminars, the doctoral forum that we formed in the school, trying to understand it and how we can use it in particular researches that the students I had were grappling with. And I must say that it was not easy. As a group we struggled, I can tell you. As if one time we were able to have one of them to come and attest, there was a lot of struggle. We moaned and groaned together. I should even say that there were times when things were very tough. Even me, who was supposed to be like showing them the way, it was not a straightforward thing. So but we persevered. The more we read, in some cases, the more we were even confused, or the more the students tried to go into this and look at the connections, the more confusion sometimes they could have. But eventually, we found some light at the end of the tunnel. The more we stayed steeped in that discourse and the debates and the conversations around the uniquenesses of such theoretical frameworks in terms of addressing different topics, the more we saw that we can actually move into the other aspects of field work and collecting some information. So that theoretical framework called the sociocultural perspective is broadly founded on, a Russian scholar called Vygotsky, and his views on the social historical origins of knowledge and the construction of knowledge through social interaction. So particularly, it has many versions, this social cultural school of thinking about, how, people think and act on the knowledge they have in a social interaction. There are many slants to it. And that is why it was possible that the different students could still use it, but adopt different methodological frameworks for the different topics they had. So this particular one for a boy used what is called the chart. Chart is CHAT, the cultural historical activity theory. It's what he particularly used. Is a particular slant or version of this social cultural theoretical framework. And he used this one for understanding his topic of relating active learning to creative performance. In other words, to help him understand the internal processes of the mind, and then the mediated processes of performance, creative performance. And so in this perspective, the internal processes of mind, which are manifest in active learning, were actually studied by connecting that to Vygotskyan thinking, or Vygotsky's social cultural theory, which also helps in trying to understand the relationship between the individual and society, but not in separation. Rather, this particular kind of thinking helps people, especially the people who are studying individual behavior, cognitive processes, in trying to understand the constitutional, the way individuals act and are acted upon by society, and how society is also acted upon by the individual. So that, back and forth constitution, this particular slant helps a student to avoid sort of separating them, or to avoid, for his case, the idea that you can understand what is going on in the mind by simply abducting what is in the mind outside of the social and cultural and historical context of this particular individual whose mind we are trying to study. Those kind of issues given by Vygotsky were very, very important in, framing and giving a foundation for what Boyu and the rest of the other colleagues who are using these frameworks to proceed in their research. And so, when it came to the connection between theory and method, the idea of connection was also based on the ontological, epistemological realities of this framework. And he identified that because his work was on learning and active learning at that, and also in connection with understanding what can come of that learning in terms of creative performances of these individuals, it meant that he's also studying something about their consciousness as people who are thinking about their learning. And so studies of this kind, when you are using this social cultural perspective, this particular theoretical lens, it was clear that one must consider actual existence of the effect of the out-of-mind objects. That means that it's not only just the internal processes in the mind, but also things that are outside of this mind that is being studied. So the study could not only focus on cognitive phenomena, but also it had to study other aspects outside of the individual. In other words, in a relationship to the social context. So ontologically, that meant that this study had to adopt a relational ontology, because there is some kind of relationship that the learning actually accommodates as the individual is actively participating in the act of learning and knowledge construction. So the above ontological characteristic, or the relational ontology that this study used, entail the use of particular methodologies. That means that the person had to then, because of that characteristic of the study, the person had to use particular methodologies. And in this particular one, he used a narrative approach. He chose to use a narrative approach, in part because he identified the theoretical assumptions of narrative approach to be resonant with how he was viewing active learning, as well as creative performance, as also socially constructed, as we have seen from the previous conversation around what the two perspectives to learning and active performance do. So according to the authors, with this kind of reality about what is possible in his particular study, given the dictates of that theoretical framework, the view that both this theoretical framework and narrative inquiry are socially constructed is what informed his choice of methodology. In other words, that is what helped him make the connection, or the understanding of the connection between the particular theoretical framework and the methodology that he actually chose. The phenomenal investigation being active learning and creative performance. And he thought that he could better understand those issues through a narrative form of inquiry rather than other methods of inquiry, for instance, surveys, or experiments, or these other things that we have said in the earlier slides. So this was based on the belief that a great deal of human thinking takes place in the form of stories. A great deal of thinking human thinking takes place in the form of stories, and such processes illuminate the social mind of the individual. So to make sense of the relational shared and meaning-making aspects of the internal processes of mind, which are embedded in active learning that he was studying, and the creative performance, which was his focus in terms of the result of the learning that was taking place. he decided to adopt a mixed methods design with its two streams of inquiry. So that means that in terms of proceeding to do the research itself, the student had to then employ a mixed methods approach. So from theory, the dictates were that whatever he had to do in terms of how he was going to approach this study, he had to approach it with a methodology that resonates with the theoretical framework. And the theoretical framework was one that views these issues as socially constructed, and that there is value in looking at the mental representations in the way knowledge is being constructed in the learning, but also that is not limited to the internal aspects of what is happening in the learner's mind, but it is also creatively constructed in the environment or constituted within the social and cultural environment in which the learning is taking place. So that allowed him to see that narrative inquiry or a narrative approach to doing research was more feasible for his kind of study, and that it could help him to address questions of how these particular learners or active learning could be talked about by the individuals that he would include in his study, or the employed individuals that he actually studied, whose learning he also studied. So narrative inquiry was the logic, the methodological tradition that he used, and that also meant that he could therefore design a study in a particular way. Like I've said, in order to capture those elements of meaning making of the processes that are happening in the mind, but also that are being seen through the products of that learning in terms of creative performance, which itself is mediated by a social source of knowledge, which is like the learning environment, what's constituted in the learning environment, the different approaches that are being used in the learning environment. For instance, he looked at, I think he carried out a survey among different, he focused on, I think, some classes in the humanities, the learning environment of the humanities, and I think the sciences. And then he also looked at stories that the employed individuals could talk about how they applied the knowledge they were learning or they had learned to actually produce and come up with creative products. So he did a mixed methods study, and that means that he had to use mixed methods logic in order to integrate those two aspects of studying, learning, and performance. And his study actually came up with very useful insights, and I think it's one of those studies that I think has helped our group, those who were part of these doctoral seminars, to really see how you can use narrative inquiry in a dissertation study. Another study that was that we have here, but that used the same tradition, methodological tradition, was looking at the question of interrogating the mindset question. And the mindset question here was in the context of understanding these programs of youth empowerment. And so for this particular study, it is a she now. She decided to predominantly utilize another version of social cultural lens, which is informed by what we call a dialogical understanding of thinking and mind and mental representation, which is again its roots in the works of Bakhtin, again a Russian. And so it says that when individuals in a social situation, there is a dialogue, and in that dialogue, the speakers or the people who are speaking take up positions, and those positions may actually explain, the kind of stories that someone will use or will actually tell about a particular issue, and that those positions will also indicate some power play in terms of the influence of the two communicators. So this particular work was focused on youths. This particular study, and the student was interested in understanding youth empowerment and how youth's mindset, which are now predominantly in the country, the target of one of the NDP3 goals, as you will know. You know that I think that is 18 or 16. That goal is about mindset change, and predominantly the mindset change issue that the NDP3 goal is targeting. They are targeting the youth, and so this particular study wanted to, have a critical conversation around the value of pushing, the idea of mindset change, as if the youths don't have a voice or shouldn't have a voice, and that voice shouldn't be heard. So her approach of the particular theoretical lens that she used then allowed for voice to be taken more seriously, the voice of the researched to be taken more seriously, and that therefore the researcher and the researched take a bit of different positions that are not characteristic of the predominant positivist type of work that some of the literature she was reading had projected. So she allowed herself to use a narrative form of inquiry. Again, just like the other study, she found that the narrative form of inquiry, in the emphasis of the role of the story and the narratives, and the fact that the narrative form of inquiry really is also a mode of inquiry that allows for bringing out more fragile voices to be given a voice or a critical space, particularly in contentious situations and communities. So she found that narrative inquiry, and with those kind of uniquenesses in how it attends to the researched, there was an opportunity for her study to critically interrogate, the voices of the youths in this mindset question, because by its nature, narrative inquiry definitely gives more space to some of the voices that would not normally be given the kind of space in research that other methods sort of do. So she used the sociocultural lens, and its particular version called the dialogical Bakhtinian's biological form of sociocultural work, which sort of borrows a lot from the literary tradition to inform her study on mindset question. And hers was predominantly qualitative. It was not mixed methods. It was predominantly qualitative. And she decided to study a number of examples of youths that had actually been given some support through these empowerment programs. She interrogated some of them who had been in different empowerment programs. And the study brought out very interesting voices and brought out very interesting insights in terms of how the youth relate with these empowerment programs and how much of the results of their engagement with those empowerment contexts question the value and what is it that is possible to do to the minds of youths, and how predominantly much of the stories and the voices of youths really speak to the challenge of the people who are designing these programs, thinking for the youth and only giving them direction of what to do. Meaning that many of these programs have not taken the voice of youth seriously, and therefore some of the failures of these empowerment programs to empower youth can be traced to the failure to take voice seriously. So I think that's some of the quick insights that we can get from that particular example. And the third one was a study again by one of the doctoral students. The third one, again, in this stream of narrative forms of inquiry, was by one of the students who was, focusing on the question of, why lecturers or why academics stay in a university environments when, the environment itself is not very appealing. So this one by Joyce Nansamba was also another interesting piece of work, again, which used a sociocultural lens to examine and interrogate this question of, why is it that predominantly the models that are applied to study the retention of staff or the retention of employees predominantly focuses does not focus on elements of stay, but instead focuses on turnover. In other words, many times, instead of trying to find the best way to retain staff or talent in an organizational environment, the predominant studies or most of the management work that have been guiding this kind of work have been based on a negative mode of thinking about how to retain talent, meaning they predominantly focus on turnover. But this study turned around that thing and decided to focus on asking that question: why do academics stay? In order to rethink differently about retention of academics, but I think it could be extrapolated to the retention of staff generally. Once this particular work is written out beyond the dissertation, I think it will start providing ways of studying retention from a more positive side. So in her study, she also utilized, again, a narrative form of inquiry, meaning that she intentionally identified narrative as the logical choice for her theoretical, social-cultural theoretical framework, which she used to study state of academics in their roles as professors, as lecturers, even though the context or the environment in which they were performing their work, in most of the environments, the conditions are not according. She actually studied public universities. I think she interviewed staff from, I think, 4 public universities. But almost most of the negative conditions were the same: the low pay, a lot of heavy workload, and so on. But again, in terms of why they stayed, she discovered that much of that is the negative aspect is not what really holds academic staff in the environments they are in. It was more to do with identity and the fact that the lecturing or the role of the lecturer or professor was viewed as more of a calling rather than just a job that someone comes to do and then gets some money out of it. She predominantly used the stories of some of those professors, and she was able to get useful insights for rethinking the question of retention. So I think for purposes of interaction, I will want to stop here. I don't think I will start on the other categories, which are more steeped in a phenomenological inquiry. I think that one would need me to again do some exposition of the theoretical issues about phenomenology first. But I think I want to stop at this one and allow for more people to interact or people to reflect more on what I've said here regarding the need for being explicit in terms of the connection between theory and method, and more specifically paying attention to the ontol and epistemic implications of making of the different methodological choices that a researcher makes, and how that then dictates the specific methods and the design of the study, and how the whole research actually pans out, and how the theory continues to inform all those aspects of the research process. So I want to end here, and I want to thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Julius Chikoma, for detailing and introducing a number of theoretical lenses in looking at our work. Your story with your students as a qualitative researcher and also developing new theoretical approaches, the focus on social cultural perspective in research. Today you have singled out one, the narrative inquiry approach. I think it has some of us and many other colleagues who have interest in qualitative research have largely picked something from your discussion on narrative inquiry. And I think you are simply making it clear that everything is possible. I remember you saying one time here that we need to, it is high time that we sit down and develop some theories of our own. So I think the work we are doing towards putting together or using some locally developed approaches towards PhD research, to me, I think is very, very important. So ladies and gentlemen, we open up the discussion as Professor requested on the social cultural perspectives in theories, and also taking up a narrative inquiry approach as a method or methodology in conducting research, and many other issues that the professor talked about could be open for discussion. If you have any contribution to this discussion this morning, please forward the contribution. If you have any question to Professor, please forward it. You can use the chat room or you can put up your hand, and then we can be able to push ahead the discussion. Thank you. Any contribution, members? Can we maybe possibly have a few submissions from the senior colleagues? Any senior colleague with some bit of submission on what Professor has mentioned? Even to the students who are trying to scratch their heads to see how they can start on the qualitative journey. We have, I think the most common, as Professor mentioned, of recent year is the mixed methods approach, where people try to combine both. Maybe as people bring in their views, Professor, I can call you back to comment. Can PhD students who are using a mixed methods approach also integrate their work using narrative inquiry? We may not go into the phenomenological approach, but how possible is it for a PhD student now using mixed methods to really rely on the narrative inquiry into as a way of analyzing and also as a way of approaching qualitative data in his or her work? That could come from me as we wait for some submissions from the members.
There are some questions.
I was muted. Sorry, I was speaking to myself. That means sorry, Dr. Walgame.
Yes,
I understand your question to actually mean that since one of the students that I utilize, the case studies I've used here to make the point of connecting theory and method, utilized in terms of specific methods, utilized the mixed methods. Can I expound on it? I think that's the take I got from your question.
Yes, Prof.
Because I think probably I didn't do that a little bit more. But yeah, I think one of the important things to pick from this conversation, especially the first particular case study I shared with you, where yes, he used a narrative mode of inquiry, but in terms of methodology or methods, he actually utilized mixed methods. Now, the issue about mixed methods and also the issue about methodology, first of all, we need to be clear that methodology is the broader framework of thinking about how to conduct the actual research, how to design it and conduct it. So even though a methodology is qualitative, it does not mean that you can't have quantitative aspects in a broadly qualitative methodological tradition. I think we need to be able to appreciate that that is possible and it actually happens. It does not mean that once it is a qualitative methodological tradition, there is no space for numbers and so on. And no, it is there. However, what we need to keep in mind is that mixed methods is different from multi-methods. Mixed method is intentioned integration of both elements of qualitative research tradition and quantitative research tradition. Elements of them are intentionally integrated. That's in a mixed method. So the core issue in a mixed method is integration. While a multi-method is simply, you have many methods that you are using to collect data. So the many methods of data collection may be, you have interviews, you have some focus group discussion, you have all those different ways that you get information for your research. That would be multi-method. But mixed method is integration. And integration also means that the idea is the two are complementing each other. Just like how this study, in terms of theoretical perspectives, were complementary. If you remember, I mentioned that in that particular student's work, there was some form of complementarity working with a cognitive tradition, which would lend itself to more quantitatively minded elements of understanding active learning. It was also complementarily looking at the other sociocultural perspectives in understanding the way knowledge is constructed in a classroom environment and the outputs of and the results of that learning in terms of performance and so on. So because there was that theoretical interest in terms of complementarity, even methodologically, there was the issue of, in terms of the information that is needed, what would be feasible in getting the kind of information that attends to those two complementary interests. So that's how mixed methods kind of came for this particular student. And therefore, he used an integrated approach, meaning that the two served a role in addressing elements and aspects of the research issues that this person was dealing with. So he did that, and he actually carried out, I think, a specific version of mixed methods. The other thing I should also mention is that mixed methods also, there are varieties of mixing. And so it is important that when you are doing a mixed methods, you actually again go back to what is it that you want, and in terms of what you want, what is going to be predominant, or what is going to come first in terms of the information you want from the qualitative angle versus the quantitative angle. So in terms of priority, means that you could have a study that has both, but then emphasizes more of one of the other. And for his part, it was mixed, both quantitative and qualitative, but it was more predominantly qualitative, meaning that he spent more emphasis on the qualitative type of information. even though he also collected quantitative aspects. So that means that it is a particular version of mixed methods in terms of the priority he put to the value of both qualitative and quantitative parts of the information. In terms of how the design worked, how the study proceed, the way he implemented the study, again, there is also an issue in terms of mixed methods here, which is to the effect that, in addition to being clear and articulate on